Hello, Daniel. I'm today with Daniel Morgan from TGP International, and we are going to have a chat ahead of Griff at FHS Riyadh regarding basically how you can leverage food halls and the new way of food halls into assets that have been around for a while or might have some spaces that are being currently underutilized. So welcome, Daniel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Jennifer. Lovely to be here.
Now, I had the pleasure of meeting you at Mamlaka a couple of weeks ago. And I have to say, I was really surprised because you'd said we were meeting, I think, at like 9 a.m. And I was like, really? 9 a.m. at, a food hall? That seems a little ambitious. I didn't think anything would be open and there'd be no one there. But I was really surprised at kind of the amount of people and the breakfast offering that you had. So taking a step back, why don't you tell us a little bit about Al Mamlaka and kind of what it's composed of and what you've achieved with it in your perspective?
Sure. We really have to step back, and obviously, thank you very much for the compliments, of course. Let's take a step back. I'd say probably 18 months ago, where the initial discussions around a food hall at Kingdom Centre were raised by the chairman of TCCL, and that's Miss Nada Alatigi, and really it's very much her vision to have a modern food hall within the development. Very forward thinking. First, we could say to market in the traditional sort of dining hall sector, and the initial discussion centered around what was probably was an underutilized asset in a sense, which was the floor of the old Robinson's, I believe the Robinson's department store, 37,000 square foot, very large space on the second floor. And essentially what we could do with that space in terms of regeneration, bringing to life and, adding in, or bringing to the centre, sort of compelling food hall offering. And was the sort of initial starting point. And at that time, we obviously submitted, our vision for the space, very much guided by Miss Nada, around the look and feel, in that it wasn't to feel too urban, it was to have that element of luxury to it, and Mediterranean perhaps in style. So we pulled the team together internally at TGP, and that's our full sort of 360 team, advisory, design, the ops team, and also then the guys that work with brands, and started to essentially hatch a plan, which came to fruition, at the end of August, September last year.
And I have to say, it seems to have come to fruition very well. But I mean, there must have been challenges along the way. What are some of the challenges you encountered in delivering the project?
Yeah, there were quite a few challenges, and the initial plan was possibly to open, a little bit earlier. But when you're going into an existing building, especially with a food hall, which tend to be quite sort of MEP heavy, and especially a space that was used predominantly for essentially for retail before. There was a lot of work that had to be done in terms of infrastructure, and that's obviously power, the gas, and also the weight. Food halls are heavy. Mamlaka's got 21 kitchens, 21 different concepts. They all are heavy. We've got a number of sort of interior structures as well that are relatively heavy, and let's not forget the thousands of people we had through on a daily basis. So there was quite a lot of structural work that needed to be done, and surveys needed to be put in place in order to make sure that we could sort of build out what was essentially designed. So probably one of the largest problems, in obviously more construction orientated, and then I'd say possibly the second challenge was the fact that you're new to market. So you're bringing a new product to market. You want to bring in the best in the market as operators, inside those pods, and actually convincing them in the beginning that it's just the right thing to do. And as we know, the food hall model is different to the traditional model. in a sense of the fact that, for the operators, it's relatively easy to come into, low capital investment, but they do tend to pay a little bit more in rent. It's very much in line with the Harrods, the time-out model, all of the models that, we've previously been involved in.
Were there some of the models that you use to kind of draw inspiration from?
In terms of design, possibly. I wouldn't say overly. Time Out's very much got its set model in the fact that it uses, it takes the best in the local market. We like to do the same, but we also like to, invite new operators into the market as well, for that sense of discovery. But in terms of design, probably not. Harrods, in terms of its element leaning towards luxury, perhaps. We also have a similar tendency to Harrods, although not quite the same price point. But again, very much a certain degree of an inspiration for us. But the operating models tend to be the same across food halls, and that was the challenge in terms of selling that to potential tenants. They came in and they said, we know that certain operators have been very well looked after in the country, and when we approached it, at times they might say that we would obviously have to pay them to come in, which obviously isn't the usual case. But
dynamic sometimes in Saudi, I feel that there's a market.
Yeah, I think so, and very much so. And I think that given the market today, I think we're in a slightly different space. And given the success of Mamlaka, we've now had a lot of those that said, "Oh well, we're not sure," have sort of come back to us and said, "Look, let us know about the next space coming up." So obviously, we've done the right thing. But yeah, challenging coming in first to market. It's always going to be a bit of a challenge for people and local operators to understand the business model. But I think that I think essentially we cracked it. So hopefully moving forward, less challenges for us.
Let me ask you, Daniel, what was the criteria that you put in place when approaching operators to come in or concepts to come in?
Yeah, I think that you're looking at a balance for a project like our Mamlaka. First of all, we've done our market studies. We understand our demographic. So you've got to get your price point right. So it's got to be concepts that fall into that sort of price bracket in a sense. And, we wanted to make our Mamlaka, as part of its social dining, open to, most of the population.
So let me ask you, sorry, Daniel, what is that? Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. What is that price point? Where does that fall for people who don't know Mamlaka?
Yeah, probably around about 100 SAR. Just below that for some. I mean, I think it's something for everybody. You can go to, you can grab something at Al Mamlaka for breakfast for 20 SAR, or you can spend 250 SAR. That it is flexible. And I think that's the right that's the right sort of price point to look at. I think that the balance there is ensuring that you get a quality offering regardless of how much you spend, and all of the operators operate at a certain level, and that's something that we're really strict on. Obviously, we operate our Mamlaka social dining as well, so we oversee the quality of what's delivered, and quality at the right price point, and you should be able to drive, in terms of the offering, you should be able to drive the footfall through that. And I think that once you've analysed that, then you can start to look at the various different operators in the market, what they offer, create a dynamic offering in the fact that, you've got all of the, essentially most of the food types covered, which I believe we have. And, that's really the sort of start point for it. And then obviously then go out to expressions of interest and then gauge the sentiment from the operators.
So let me ask you, what is performing, if you can say, kind of what's performing really well, or is there a standout at the moment?
I think good to talk about food types rather than individual operators. It's not a bit sensitive.
True.
But we know that anything sort of Levant, Arabic is always going to do well, and we know anything protein-based is going to do really well. Absolutely. Look, the two main drivers of a food hall tend to be, across the world, your burger and your pizza. high quality burger, high quality pizza, and then others then around that. We've got Greek, we've got Japanese, we've got a breakfast offering. But yeah, it tends to be protein and sort of Arabic offering that does the best there.
So let me say, this has been called kind of like a new type of food hall and something different for the market. What are the key components, do you think, that make it unique or make it kind of innovative?
Yeah, I think that just to go back to that sort of creating something that's compelling in terms of an offering. One thing that makes it completely unique, number one, is the look and feel in terms of design. All of the food halls that we work on, Depa Chica, for example, which is very much a food hall, and possibly Al Mamlaka social dining being more of a dining hall, have a very different look and feel, and that's really the vision of between us and the client, or often very client driven, of course. So first of all, it really has a sense of place, and it will always look slightly different. And then it's those key areas that I touched on earlier before, which is the curation side of it, making sure that the offering consists of local favourites, things that certain members of the population feel much more comfortable with going to, things that have been in the market and resonated for a number of years. It's really important to touch on those. Brands that are in the market but super exciting and new and on that upward trajectory, really important to have. And then, of course, that the additional new brands, something new. And that's, I think, then that falls into that cycle of, there's always a reason to come back.
Right.
So the ongoing curation as well.
Sorry, the ongoing curation. Yeah, if we could expand on that a bit, because I think that's interesting how you keep it fresh and the ongoing, as you said, newness. So coming back for something different. What's the life cycle for most of the operators?
Yeah, I mean, you tend to sign shorter term agreements with the operators, and it has to work for everybody. Has to work for them, of course, profitable. But it also has to work in terms of quality and so on. Every 6 months you should see something new. That's the reality. Some of the vendors will turn over. I wouldn't say sooner than that, but we're already looking at really what's going to be new for next year, and that's what's most exciting about it. Always bringing something new to market, and often different tenants will want to bring different things in. So we're looking at that next cycle for our Mamlaka at the moment. And that's also then through, you mentioned breakfast, that's through breakfast, lunch, dinner, and late night, because obviously we service all of them. Our breakfast offerings obviously do less revenue than our late night offerings for obvious reasons, and the fact that Riyadh is very much a nighttime city. So, you've got to measure things with the right parameters. But yeah, I'd say, certainly in the course of a year, you'll see changes.
And let me ask you, how has the market received Al Mamlaka? How has it kind of been received by the local population?
I mean, I think very well. I think there was a general sentiment in the market here that there was a lot of new openings, certainly over the last 2 years, that have been very luxury orientated in terms of high ticket price. And I think that, I know that Mamlaka Social Dining, offers an alternative to that. So, a beautiful space, great quality food at an accessible price point. And I think that if you deliver that in the right way, and I believe we have, you're going to create ongoing success. And, pre-Ramadan, we had one of our best weeks ever. And let's not forget, the opening months there were pretty crazy. We didn't go out to market. There wasn't a lot of advertising. It was a lot of word of mouth. And we know how the city is that sort of everybody comes once, and do they keep coming back? And I think that we've proven that. Also, we're not a winter venue, essentially, where, we don't have a lot of outdoor space. So we tend to lean more towards the warmer months. So, we anticipate great traction ahead. So I think the market's really warm to it. And we can only measure that by footfall and what we hear back from our guests. And, everything that we've heard today has been very positive.
No, from what I've heard, it's been very well received, and I was really impressed, I have to say, when I saw it. And as I said, that was one of the things that surprised me, was that it is really an all-day dining destination. So you can go for breakfast, and there's people there. It wasn't totally dead. It was, there was a fair footfall of people, and for Riyadh, that can be quite unusual.
Yeah, the breakfast market's a really strange one. We studied it in a little detail. Breakfast venues tend to be open, a little earlier than us, probably 7:00, for the diehard breakfast fans. We're also very fortunate in terms of where we're located. So there's a lot of offices around us, and let's not forget that, above us is a rather large tower with a number of, sort of office tenants in. And that's really interesting for us, because obviously we've become a bit of a place for the local community to come and meet, not just business, but also, families. It's really interesting watching how the space moves throughout the day, in terms of the different usage. And that's what we love to see, everything from, business meetings, to, very, very family orientated on certain evenings, especially at weekends, which is really good.
No, it sounds great. And then let me ask you, is there any kind of takeaways that you've had from the project? Anything that you think moving forward you've learned from it, or has really changed the way, the Saudi dining scene?
Yeah, I think we're constantly learning, especially with I don't want to get into long discussions around data, but, we're really learning around the data. We've just introduced, delivery. We anticipated delivery being wildly successful. It's something that we need to work on a lot more. How we manage that delivery, how you manage the delivery aspect in country. So we're currently going through that at the moment. The usage of the space, in terms of the density, the number of seats versus the number of pods. People tend to come in slightly bigger groups. That's something that's people tend to, especially in the evenings. So your configuration on tables would often change, depending on how you might do it elsewhere in Europe. So you're always learning little ways of how to, create a space that's, essentially more user friendly, perhaps. Where we can go next with the project in terms of taking over additional space, perhaps, and how we can utilize the space more in the summer months, potentially. All of those things at the moment we're studying, and there may be some things that some additions that might come up, certainly in the next year or so, with regards to the brand, or some other areas that we might look at in terms of expansion. But as I say, we're always learning every day from our guests, our guests and our customers, and of course, most importantly, our tenants. We certainly wouldn't be able to, deliver what we're delivering, without their, dedication to quality and consistency. So absolutely learning every day.
And let me ask you finally, from an asset owner's perspective, there's been a lot of talk in recent years about bringing food halls into spaces or areas that have previously been, had retail in them. You mentioned some of the considerations initially. What, from your perspective, makes an ideal space to put a food hall into it?
If you consider our Mamlaka, it's not the most, for those of you that have been, you'll probably know that it isn't probably the best space, because we've got windows on almost all sides.
But I think that makes that's great as well, because it makes it different to some other food halls where, it feels like it has a much lighter, airier kind of ambiance.
From a design perspective, it's lovely. There's challenges associated. You need a minimum space in reality, right? To create, you can, otherwise people, I don't know, you could get into sort of micro food halls or micro restaurants. I'm not sure we want to get into that. So you need a minimum size in order to create a sort of compelling offering. And I'm guessing that starts at around 15,000 square foot. It's ideal. Food halls are ideal for large spaces that have been previous sort of big box or department stores. We know department stores aren't big fashion at the moment, so we often get approached, or basement spaces. Depa Chica in Depa Chica by default means basement dining. So you tend to take spaces that are difficult to utilize. And that's perfect, right? In terms of revitalizing an asset, because you're going to take something that essentially is quite difficult for other concepts to go into. So you're given often the most challenging asset to work with, and it's, essentially our job to drive footfall through it and create value for the landlord and the asset owner. And I think that food halls do that very well. So they tend to be the sort of the parameters. We've got a big space, we don't know what to do with it. Competitive social dining also falls into that category. It's another area that we look at. But dining halls and food halls, tend to fill those spaces very well, and create a lot of value for the asset, especially when we think about how much footfall they drive. If you're doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 1,000 covers a day, that drives a lot of footfall, and it drives a lot of potential revenue into stores that are around you. And as we know that, those assets and larger assets, are kind of valued on, rent and the demographic that goes through and essentially footfall. And food halls do that for you.
No, that makes sense. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. It has been a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in Riyadh.
I look forward to seeing you. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you.